Welcome, everybody, to the Beards and Bible Podcast. My name is Josh. I'm joined, as always, by my good buddy Gabe. Gabe, how you doing tonight, man?
I'm excellent. I'm good. Excelente.
Excelente.
Doing well.
That's how the Spaniards say it.
Yeah. That's how they say it south of the border as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
How's life in LA? Lower Alabama.
It's good. It's good. Now, the other LA, not too hot. I was watching the news. It doesn't sound like it's, things aren't.
It's probably hot with all that tear gas, I would say, but besides that.
Yeah, now I'm just sitting in here in the studio. There's Stacy's brewing a vat of yogurt behind me. So, on the floor. Apparently, apparently my studio, my podcasting studio, is the only suitable place in the entire house to brew a vat of
You
yogurt.
said vat, yeah. It's just the way that it rolls off the tongue. Brewing a vat of yogurt. Brewing a hot vat of ooh.
This is what it looks like. Yeah.
That actually looks delicious.
Yeah. It is actually good. You mix it with some honey, put it in like a smoothie with some berries and stuff, and it actually is good.
Is that beeping on your end or my end? Do you hear beeping?
I made it mad.
How dare you touch the vat of yogurt? You have made the yogurt gods very angry.
I'm getting an E3 error code on the yogurt maker.
No.
I don't know.
You were displaying it for the whole world on YouTube, and then the yogurt maker was angry at you.
I'm going to go ahead and unplug it because it's beeping. Is it still?
Are you going to ruin the yogurt? Yeah, I still hear it. Are you going to ruin the... Ladies and gentlemen, right now Gabe is reaching down. He's unplugging his wife's vat of yogurt. I'm giving everybody a play-by-play. That's listening to the audio version.
Yeah. Okay. So I unplugged the yogurt maker. I'm back.
Yeah. You're going to plug it back in when we're done, though, right?
I'll probably forget. Let's just be honest.
Well, then does it ruin that entire vat of homemade yogurt?
I don't know. Only one way to find out.
Dude, you are in so much trouble right now. So much trouble.
Hey, Siri, remind me in 1 hour to plug the yogurt maker back in.
Okay, I added plug the yogurt maker back in for this evening at 9:07 p.m.
There we go.
Dude, you got to change your Siri's voice. He doesn't sound very masculine.
No. It's just like I need to be the alpha in the car, when we're driving.
Yeah. You got to have a beta. You got to totally have a beta Siri,
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Well, life's good. Been working hard, busy.
Yeah.
Kids are out of school. Do you guys do year-round schooling, or does your kids have a summer break?
Yeah, it's like year-round, but it's like, hey, let's just remember how to like read and add numbers together, kind of stuff,
Sure.
So,
Yeah. Well, that's good.
Yeah. Hey, what about you guys? You on summer break? You kids?
Yeah. They had summer break the past few weeks. We did our version of VBS last week, and that was great. It was very, very busy. We were there every night at the church last week, but overall pretty good. We had our AC go out, which is never fun.
No.
And so we had about a week and a half of no AC.
Really? Wow, that's a long time with no AC.
Well, we would have refrigerant pumped in, but we had a leak.
Oh, wow.
So refrigerant would get pumped in, so we'd have a little bit of relief, but then it would always leak out, and it would start to get hot again. But fortunately, we got that taken care of last night and the part replaced, so we were very, very, very grateful. I slept better last night than I had in about a week and a half because let me just tell you, there's nothing like coming back to an 80-degree house that is muggy and humid and feels like soup.
I'm sure the ozone just loves all that freon just leaking out.
Man. Just
climate change.
Hole in the ozone bigger and bigger.
Just accelerate it. Yeah, when in 2018, Hurricane Irma hit us when we were living down in Lakeland, Florida. And it took these 2 pine trees and threw them into our power lines about 5 houses down from ours in the back of our house. And it knocked the power out to our house. And I mean, the whole state was just in disarray, obviously. And all these crews, these tree trimming crews and stuff were just everywhere, just spread really thin. They finally, 8 days later, made it to our house. And I finally got power restored at our house and turned the AC on. But other than that, man, it was like 8 days of like just sweltering heat. You take a
You
cold
guys couldn't
shower.
have fans either because it was no power, right?
No.
Gosh.
We'd open up the windows at night just to get some air circulation going through,
Yeah.
Yeah, in Central Florida heat, it's nothing to be, all that humidity and stuff.
Oh, yeah. What time of year was it?
I think it was like early September. I don't remember.
Oh,
Someone can look that
yeah.
up when Hurricane Irma hit.
Yeah. So early September in Central Florida is like mid-July in Tennessee.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nothing to play with. Gosh.
But
Yeah, when we were in college, we had Hurricane Gene hit us. Was that 2004, 2005, something like that?
Yeah.
And we didn't have power in the dorms for a couple of days. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
So, but
Charlie.
when you're 19, that doesn't seem like as big a deal. But when you're like a dad of complaining children, it seems a lot bigger of a deal.
Yeah.
Well, good deal. Well, have you been following what's been happening internationally? I know you mentioned stuff going on in LA, and our prayers are with the folks in LA as well. If you haven't followed what's going on there, there's been a lot of rioting and protesting due to ICE raids in Los Angeles. So forgive us if we made light of that at the beginning of the episode. But yeah, that's crazy stuff going down on the West Coast.
Yeah. But yeah, I've been following the Iran-Israel thing pretty closely. Even, to the point where I'm like, I just need to disengage from this because this is like, I'm going to sleep listening to a podcast called The Times of Israel. It's an Israeli-based news podcast. It just kind of gives you like a rundown of everything that happened that day in Israel. And it's just overwhelming sometimes, it's like, man. And then you got all these talking heads in the United States that have to chime in with their opinion, and
it's just overkill a little bit.
And there's us making a podcast about it, and
exactly. Let's add to the noise.
Well, I think Benjamin Netanyahu is definitely going to tune into this episode, and
I think so.
He will take our advice.
I hope so. I sure hope so. We're the only ones that can set up straight. So, So for those of us who may not have been following this news story, maybe you've just kind of seen headlines, snippets, whatever the case is. Let's just, we're going to go through just some basic facts about it and maybe just kind of hopefully distill it in a way that's understandable. But I guess the biggest thing, the best place to start would be what happened. This is June 12th, so that would have been Friday? Or Thursday, maybe? Look at my calendar. Thursday. So on June 12th, Gabe, what exactly happened? Can you walk us through it?
Oh, yeah. Well, man, it's hard to jump in that super late in the game like that and without a much broader context. But yeah, basically, Iran has been working on coming up with some nuclear weapons, and Israel was naturally and understandably so deeply alarmed by that. And maybe I'll get into some of the quotes that Iranian leaders have said in the past, but so why that is the case, that why they would be alarmed by Iran in particular having nuclear weapons. But so, Israel militarily struck Iran's primarily military infrastructure, and pinpointed strikes on Iranian leaders and nuclear scientists, took out missile defense systems, then is now broadening their strikes to missile launchers, ballistic missile sites and launchers. Right away, that sparked off this massive retaliation from Iran, and they just started lobbing hundreds of ballistic missiles into Israel. Some of them, ballistic just means they go really high up and then they come back down. Some of these ballistic missiles could be steered by people, so they were steered into places they thought would be high value targets. The city of Haifa has a lot of power plant infrastructure, oil infrastructure, storage, military bases, that sort of thing. Thankfully, not a lot of mass casualties or anything. There have been dozens of casualties of Israeli civilians, but a lot of injuries, but not a lot of vast damage. Definitely, I mean, Israel's definitely definitely took this round in terms of victory. And it's crazy that here you have this little nation striking this other nation that's, I think it's like 2,000 miles away, with fighter jets and stuff, and I mean, just absolutely taking out the air force of this nation that's something like 8 to 10 times the size of Israel.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what I'm understanding as well, the missile strikes that Israel launched, so it was Operation Rising Lion.
Mm-hmm.
They've been planning this for years.
Yeah.
This wasn't just like an overnight thing. I mean, it seemed to come out of nowhere, but if you know anything about the tension between these two nations, we'll get into it here in a minute, they would have had to have been planning this for a long time. Mm-hmm. And the strikes were very, very, very targeted, so much so that there's photos of like an apartment building and a hole in the wall where a missile went through that hole in the wall right into the bedroom of a leader of the Revolutionary Guard Command, which is like an arm of their military that one could say is like a proxy for Hamas and other terrorist groups. Am I getting that right?
Yeah.
So the big motivation, as Gabe says, is like the fear is, okay, Iran is only a number of days away from getting a nuclear weapon. Mm-hmm. If they get a nuclear weapon, that's an existential threat to the nation of Israel altogether.
Right. Yeah.
And Iran has made that a very clear goal of theirs for a long time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Since the Islamic Revolution in the late 1970s, one of the primary objectives of the Iranian government has been to literally wipe Israel off the map. If you remember our old buddy, what was his name? Ahmadinejad. Mahmoud Ahmadinejad. He always wore the members only jackets. Remember that
guy? Yeah. Somebody
like
told me I looked like him one time. I was like, oh, thanks. Jeez.
Yeah.
Did you see it?
He literally said literally Israel must be wiped off the map. And
wow.
I mean, so about every year you have these like really eye-opening quotes from these Iranian leaders who are saying basically Israel is a cancer on the globe and needs to be removed.
Right.
So
they mean it. They're not. It's not just rhetoric. Like they actually, they intend to carry out what it is that they have been talking about for years. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are pushing this issue without that context in mind, that these people are Islamo lunatics who are like, the very existence of Iran, or I'm sorry, the very existence of Israel creates a massive problem for that region and the desire to reestablish a Muslim caliphate. So Israel in its existence just throws a wrench in those plans. So you have like all of these quotes. I mean, just horrible things that they're saying and beliefs about Israel. And then, so like if I'm a psychopath and I'm going to say to someone, hey, Josh Brooker, I want to take him out. I want to end him. He needs to be removed. I'm saying all these things year after year after year. And then I go, hey, by the way, I'm working on a nuclear weapon. That person, like, you have every right to take action to save your life at that point. But not only have we been kicking this can down the road, militarily speaking, I mean, I can remember back in the early 2000s, John McCain being like, the Iranians are crazy. We better keep an eye on them. Well, here we are. Just literally, they're saying that they were days away from enriching uranium to wipe Israel off the map. Right. And then Israel is like, all right, and today's the day. Let's do it. And they went in and they just absolutely crippled the military might of this much larger nation. It's really fascinating.
It really is. And, a lot of the strikes were on those sites where there were, scientists, there was uranium enrichment centers. Mm-hmm. And so, there's a couple of different goals that have been proposed, and I guess we can get into that a little bit later. But, obviously to stop the nuclear threat would be probably goal number one if you were doing a triage. To take out those military leaders that would have had, nefarious interest in mind when it comes to Israel and the leadership and the plans to carry out those plans. And then thirdly, possibly to prompt an entire regime change.
Yeah.
To destabilize, because Iran, up until 1979, I think it was, was pretty much like a westernized nation that was very tolerant, very secular. I mean, obviously there were, a lot of Muslims there just because you're in the Middle East, but it was not anything like it is today. You had a freedom of press, you had freedom of religion, you had all that stuff. And then when the Islamic Revolution happened in 1979, it became this, just absolutely authoritarian theocracy that was run by very radicalized Muslims that one could say were possibly terrorists. And so over the past few years, a lot of citizens have gotten really fed up with it. And some people have suggested that, there might be revolutions happening in Iran before this even happened.
Yeah.
So maybe Israel is kind of giving that push, that nudge to the citizens of Iran to come up and overthrow their government. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, some would say that the Operation Rising Lion, it is a hearkening back to the Book of Numbers, but it's also if you look at Iran's flag, before it was an Islamic symbol, I believe there was a lion on their flag. So after the Islamic Revolution in Iran, they replaced it with this symbol. So maybe it's kind of like a tongue-in-cheek of like, hey, we want the people to rise back up and overthrow this tyrannical government.
Interesting. What reference does it have to the Book of Numbers?
It's Numbers 24, I believe. Let me look it up for us. It's prophecy. It's like a prophetic oracle, sort of like.
I didn't know that. That's really interesting.
Yeah. Rising Lion. Yeah. So it's, remember Balaam, the false prophet. So he's like, he says, the people rise like a lioness. They rouse themselves like a lion that does not rest till it devours its prey and drinks the blood of its victim. So that's
interesting.
Where they think that they named this operation after. It says there's no divination against Jacob, no evil omens against Israel. It will now be said of Jacob and of Israel, see what God has done. The people rise like a lioness, and they rouse themselves like a lion that does not rest.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. Huh. So in addition to the Iran trying to create nuclear weapons, they were also funneling tons of money and material goods and supplies, weaponry to these proxy groups that were stationed around Israel. To the west and somewhat just to the east, you had Hamas. Then to the south in Yemen, you have the Houthis, and to the north, you have Hezbollah. And Iran was propping up and funding and equipping all three of these proxy terrorist groups, which they all had one number of things in common. They were extremist Muslim groups. They called for and sought after the eradication of all Jews and the nation of Israel. They indiscriminately targeted civilian population centers in Israel with whatever weaponry they had at their disposal. So Iran, just that alone, I believe, was deserving of a military attack on this scale. Yeah.
So this has been building and building and building and building for, 50 years.
I mean,
close to that.
Since the founding of Israel, I'd say it's like, yeah.
And so, Israel knew that if Iran got a nuclear weapon, it's over, right? Even if they didn't use it immediately, it would start an arms race with a lot of other Islamic nations around them. And so if you think of the instability in terms of just conflict in the Middle East, okay, add a nuclear component to that. And then what do you think we're dealing with, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's been the reaction from, obviously we in the U.S. are exceptionally polarized. Something happens and everybody on the right goes to their talking points. Everybody on the left goes to their talking points. It doesn't seem to be as nice and neat and tidy with this incident as it has in other incidents. So explain that to me. Why has that been perhaps?
Yeah, I don't know exactly. I'm theorizing. So normally what happens is at least the Republicans are very pro-Israel because there's a lot of I would say evangelical or Judeo-Christian influence in the Republican Party and the conservative side of the United States of America. And Democrats are usually neutral to kind of hands-off when it comes to anything Israel. We saw that with Barack Obama. We saw a little bit with Joe Biden.
Right.
But what's interesting about this instance and the escalation that's happening in the Middle East, it seems to be splintering the conservative right in the U.S. So you have people like not Charlie
Tucker Carlson.
Tucker Carlson. You have
Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Yep, Marjorie Taylor Greene. You have Tulsi Gabbard. You have the funny guy on just influencer JP Sears, all coming out. I mean, and many more are saying, "Hey, let's not get involved." And then even some actually speaking ill towards Israel's level of aggression against Iran, like JP Sears saying, for instance, that like Israel's led by a bunch of demon politicians. And I was like shocked by that because, but yeah, so I think what happened is when the Russia and Ukraine war broke out during the Biden presidency, Republicans, in American politics are like this. When you see the opposition doing something, that makes you automatically anti that something. So when Biden was sending money and weaponry to Ukraine to fight off a Russian invasion, all the Republicans were rallying around and saying that that's not our war. We shouldn't be getting entangled in these things. And that became like the new talking point for a lot of conservatives and Republicans in the United States. So when this happened, all those same people, and I think a lot of people that were libertarian leaning, and they kind of melded into the Republican crowd. Now they're saying, this is not our war, talking about Iran and Israel. Let's not go there. Let's not send money. And so they're continuing kind of that mantra. And it's interesting because traditionally speaking, Republicans have had very little issues with going to war.
Right. Yeah. Very hawkish.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, look at George Bush and
yep.
The George Bush Sr., George Bush Jr., both led our nations into war. And, I would say the circumstances were less defensible than this.
Right. Yeah. On the left, it kind of seems like what's so interesting is that, like you said, the war between Russia and Ukraine, I've heard people on the left being just absolutely, passionate that we got to be on the right side of history. We got to, defend Ukraine. We got to whatever. But then with this, it's kind of like, well, no, we can't do this. We got to have diplomacy. We got to have restraint. You had Senator Tim Kaine basically trying to introduce this war powers resolution to stop U.S. forces from being drawn in without congressional approval. Cori Bush, representative, saying that it'd be unconstitutional, it'd be dangerous. We need to use de-escalation. So it's very interesting. You watch, like you said, this international conflict pan out, and then immediately we go, okay, what's my group saying about it? And then it's just like the misadventures in groupthink.
Yep.
Instead of just looking at the issue and going, hey, let's talk through this. Like, this is unique. This is different. This is in some ways like Russia, Ukraine, in other ways not like Russia, Ukraine at all. Just interesting how that works. What about the Trump White House? What has the Trump administration done with this?
I don't think Trump wants to get us into a war either. I think he wants to be a president of peace, but I think he wants to be a president of peace through through strength. Yeah. And so what I think he's doing is he's moving all of these chess pieces to the board and posturing himself as saying, hey, we will definitely do this if need be. So he's sending these carrier groups and stuff to the Mediterranean, and things are just moving and shaking. And I think he's trying to send a signal. I don't think he's bluffing, but I also don't think that he wants to get us entangled in a war in the Middle East again.
Yeah,
but that's my thought. I think that's where he's at. Yeah, I don't think he wants to go there. I think the 250th birthday of the Army and that parade they had in DC, I think that was just a show of force. Honestly, I think that was like just a flexing of the muscles. But they say, hey, don't point a gun at someone that you're not willing to shoot, right? Like an intruder comes in your house and you're gonna point the gun, you better be prepared to pull the trigger.
Sure.
And I think that's kind of where we're at. It's like, is he prepared to pull a trigger if they call this bluff?
Well, so the U.S. involvement right now kind of is okay. We're on very thin ice because the Trump administration has been using some pretty direct rhetoric, demanding for the unconditional surrender of Iran, all that stuff, right? Yeah. And then the U.S. saying we stand with Israel. I don't know. Can you vouch for the fact that have we directly funded Israel? I mean, with this war, I know there's a lot of funding with Hamas and all that stuff with that conflict, but I mean,
I don't know if we just I don't know so much.
Is it just we give directly to the Department of Defense?
We've definitely sold Israel lots of weapons. That's public knowledge that we've sold them lots of weapons and technology, and then they take it and modify it and use it. Like F-35s or Apaches and so on.
Sure.
I think at this point, if I had to guess, we're probably sharing intelligence with them. And we do have batteries of like air defense artillery or stuff there. Like we have boots in the ground in Israel right now. That's public knowledge that there are U.S. soldiers in Israel manning these air defense batteries and helping intercept these ballistic missiles that are coming across into their airspace.
Yeah, so one of the things that is kind of unclear right now, and we're kind of on this thin ice to see if the U.S. will do it, the largest bomb that we have as Americans, the GBU-57, it's the largest ordnance that we have outside of a nuclear weapon, could be used to basically destroy Iran's deepest, like uranium ore or whatever. So it's like a really kind of hard to reach spot, and the GBU-57 could go to that mountain facility, basically blow the poop out of a mountain. I mean, it's a 30,000 pound bomb. I mean, if you Google pictures of it, it's enormous, right? It's one of the biggest in the world. It's the biggest one we've got outside of a nuclear weapon. Yeah. And so the question is the U.S. going to drop it for Israel on, this bunker? If America does that, that would be considered an act of escalation and U.S. involvement on a significant way, right?
Well, not only that, but I guess they're saying that there's only one plane in the world that can carry this bomb, and that is the B-2 stealth bomber. And it's like, what?
So it has to be Americans that do it.
Here, to me, it kind of feels like a straw man argument. It's like, what are you going to do, America? Here's the situation. And it's like this, ultimatum or something. But I think that Israel, if Israel could get 3,000 pagers to explode on the hips of 3,000 Hezbollah operators inside another nation, I think they could figure out how to make this thing collapse without a B-2 bomber. That's just but the big thing, the big line in the sand that everybody's worried about in America's involvement because it'd be like, oh, we can go in there and mop the floor with Iran, no problem. I mean, Israel's already done most of the work anyways. Why don't we just go ahead and clean house and allow them to have the regime change and be a democracy, right?
It doesn't stop at Iran, though.
Yeah, the big problem is Iran has two big friends that need Iran's oil.
Yes.
And that is Russia and China.
Yes.
And so the question is, are we ready to beat up that neighborhood bully when that neighborhood bully has a really crazy couple uncles that come and visit every couple days,
Right, exactly.
That's kind of where we're at with it.
Yeah, because then essentially you start World War III.
Right, yeah. And if Russia or China feel like we're coming in to see some oil fields or refineries, then they might make a move on it. But
they're both nuclear superpowers as well.
Yeah, I think Israel can handle itself. I think we can continue to give them intelligence, continue to position our military might and hardware in a place where it shows that we have a vested interest in what's going on. But I think we could stand back and let Israel be the pit bull in the region that we need it to be. And I think a lot of other countries in the region, honestly, are probably thankful for that pit bull that Israel is. And I think in behind closed doors, a lot of them are saying, thank God that Israel finally is, because I mean, Iran with a nuclear bomb is like I said, that crazy neighborhood bully with a handgun. It's like everybody wants to do something. Everybody's too scared to do something.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I guess the question is, especially on the left, it kind of seems like everybody's wanting to crap all over Israel. I mean, I understand that in the sense of there's a lot of people that have a lot of qualms with what's going on in Gaza and that situation. And, we could spend a lot of time unpacking, humanitarian crisis in Gaza and all that stuff, right? Mm-hmm. But when it comes to this, for my friends on the left that are very down on Israel, just Israel can do nothing right. Was there any other way for Israel to deal with the situation in Iran? Could they have done it through diplomacy? Could they have done it through... I mean, how do you get Iran to back down from developing a nuclear weapon besides doing it this way?
Yeah, we've tried a lot of different things. I think decades of sanctions and attempts to negotiate have all kind of fallen short. So
probably not.
No,
what I'm hearing you say, yeah.
No, I don't think so. I think there comes a point where, I mean, I think anyone would say that diplomacy is the ideal,
right?
But sometimes in this life, you have to resort to the lesser ideal, which is physical violence, and then that physical violence sometimes prompts the other party to want to come to the table. I mean, we saw that with World War II, and any other conflict any other human being has gone through in this entire human history is like, hey, I want to work things out. And then they're like, no, I still want to try to kill you. And it's like, okay, well, I'm gonna have to take matters in my own hand. I don't want to.
Yeah, exactly. There has to be like a or what, right?
Right.
Because one of the things that you've seen is all of these different sanctions, all of these different attempts at diplomacy. Iran would agree to them superficially, and then essentially behind their back, they were still working to do the opposite of what they were agreeing to.
Yeah.
And so the intelligence that Israel has, number one, best in the world. It's insane what they're able to do. It's kind of scary, actually.
They were saying Mossad agents were living in Iran for like upwards of a decade, building drones and building, I mean, all kinds of stuff. And they were preparing.
Well, the fact they knew where their bedrooms were and which side of the apartment building their bedrooms were, so they could target those with missile strikes, is that's incredible. Yeah. So, like, I don't even know where I was going with that.
Just talking about intelligence, Israeli
intelligence.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like they knew this is going on regardless of what Iran was saying publicly and agreeing to superficially. The truth is they had no intention of slowing down their nuclear program. They had no intention of not developing, and enriching uranium so they could build a weapon. So it doesn't seem like diplomacy had worked. And so if you went down the path that, they were going down, using diplomacy, using sanctions, and this nation is clearly not honoring it. Do you just kind of take the risk? Oh, well, we tried. Because that's essentially what the UK did with Adolf Hitler in the 1930s.
Yeah.
So the philosophy of appeasement. I think it was Neville Chamberlain, the British Prime Minister, that used that philosophy. Didn't work.
Yeah, you can't do diplomacy with psychopaths, as we learned.
So how does this shake out? How does this end? Like, what's the hope? And what are some potential outcomes, you think?
I have no idea. But I know that we need to look at it through a biblical lens, and I know what the Bible says about Israel, and that God has a plan for Israel. Israel is a key, I would say, cornerstone in biblical prophecy. So I think we could, as what they say, prophecy is better read as history, meaning you can see things happening on the news and go back to your Bible and say, okay, I think this is where we're at on the timeline.
Can I read you a comment that we got today on our Facebook? And I'd love for you to respond.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Okay. So I posted...
Trigger warning?
I don't know. I would love to respond to this individual. I posted kind of the teaser, and I put, this is a developing story, interesting times we're living in, and then just kind of talked about, everything going on.
Yeah. And
one of the first comments was, y'all should do a podcast about Christians who are giddy about the end times and try to fulfill/force biblical prophecy by their own accord, replacing the will of God with the will of man. Just start by looking for American Christian men who are obsessed with Israel. I would listen. And I said, so-and-so, we talk about that kind of stuff a lot, actually. Sounds like you need to start a pod. I'd listen. That was maybe a little sassy. So,
yeah.
So what do you say to that? What do you think?
Ooh. How can we boil that down to one question? Giddy about end times?
Giddy about end times and try to fulfill biblical prophecy by their own accord, replacing the will of God with the will of man.
Yeah. I honestly can't say that I know a human being that's giddy about the end times. I know people who are very nerdy about the end times and spend an insane amount of time studying it, but there are very few minority that do that. Me, when it comes to end times, I'm just like, I don't know.
So in the spirit of fairness, this individual is probably talking about those individuals who would say anything that happens in Israel, they're like, oh, we know what this is.
Yeah.
And they run to their Bible and okay, so this is probably this, that. Oh, this is exciting, what we're living in, what we're seeing, right?
Yeah.
Which is like newspaper eschatology, right? But Jesus said, no man knows the hour or the day.
Yeah.
So maybe that's what he's talking about, I think.
Maybe. Yeah, I mean, there may be people. I mean, there was a guy, I remember maybe the 80s, he tried to set the Alaska Mosque on fire, Dome of the Rock on fire on the Temple Mount. Like, he was a crazy, out of his mind, like claiming to be Christian. I think he had like an M16 in his hand, and he would have like a thing of gasoline in the other, and was trying to set it on fire.
Did he survive? Was he gunned down?
I don't remember. But yeah, he was trying to wipe the Temple Mount clean of the Dome of the Rock so that a third temple could be built.
Gosh.
But there is something to be said of self-fulfilling prophecies. So if you read prophecy in the Bible, and you say, in order for that to happen, this has to happen, and you do the first part, is it not then fulfilled? And I understand how. Okay, so for instance, I know this ministry that operates in Israel called Hayovel, which means the Jubilee. They read I think it's in Isaiah where it says that it's speaking to the inhabitants of Judea upon their return back to the land of Israel post-exile. It says that foreigners will come and they will trim your vines and gather your grapes. So this
I know
ministry,
this ministry. Yeah.
I think they're actually based out of Tennessee.
They aren't. My in-laws know them, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. They bring people from all over the world to volunteer to go in the spring and in the fall to trim grapevines and harvest grapes. And by doing so, fulfill that prophecy in a way. But it's like, is that prophecy not fulfilled because because they're doing it of their own will of man?
By their own accord, are they replacing the will of God with the will of man? That's an interesting way of looking at it.
It is a very interesting way of looking at it. And I don't know the answer to it, and it's a really good question, but it is happening. Foreigners are coming all over the world to trim these grapevines.
Yeah.
It's really interesting.
I wonder if the criticism from folks is, Americans that would look at anything that Israel does, like a secular Israeli government, and say that's God's will for the secular Israeli government to do that because they're ethnically Jewish. Maybe that's what he's talking about. Maybe.
Yeah. No,
because I think you and I would both say, well, no, that doesn't. Believing as a Christian that God has a plan for ethnic Israel in the end times does not mean we look at every decision that the secular Israeli government makes and say, oh, yep, carte blanche, anything they do, that's God.
Yeah. 100%,
that doesn't mean at all. So that's a caricature and a straw man argument.
Yeah, I would say there's a lot of deep imperfections and injustices in the Israeli government and Israeli
any
culture.
Secular government. Yeah,
absolutely. But that doesn't mean that God is not working.
Yeah,
His plan of restoration or redemption, whatever that looks like, through the fact that this nation is there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That leads us to something that's interesting. And that's the prophecy of Jeremiah 49, 34 through 39. Gabe, you want to look that up? Jeremiah 49, 34 through 39. And so as Gabe is looking it up, I've seen quite a bit of my friends who are more dispensationalist in their view. So like a premill dispensationalism, talking about the prophecy of Jeremiah 49 when all these attacks came out. And I was kind of like, man, I don't know if I've heard the prophecy of Jeremiah 49 in relation to end times and in relation to Iran. So
this is the first time when you put it in the show notes, the first time I've heard of it as well.
Yeah. So you got it pulled up?
I think so. You said Jeremiah 29.
49.
49. Oh, no.
Oh, gosh. You just wasted a bunch of time looking at 29.
Jeremiah 49. Okay. I think I got it now.
34 through 39.
Okay, let me read this here. This is the word of the Lord that came to Jeremiah the prophet concerning Elam at the beginning of the reign of Zedekiah, king of Judah. This is what the Lord of hosts says. Behold, I will shatter Elam's bow, the mainstay of their might. I will bring the four winds against Elam from the four corners of the heavens, and I will scatter them to all these winds. There will not be a nation to which Elam's exiles will not go. So I will shatter Elam before their foes, before those who seek their lives. I will bring disaster upon them, even my fierce anger. I will send out the sword after them until I finish them off. I will set my throne in Elam and destroy its kings and officials. Yet in the last days I will restore Elam from captivity.
Yeah, so Elam was an ancient kingdom located in what is now southwestern Iran. And so the prophecy in Jeremiah 49 says the Lord will break the bow of Elam. So some have said, well, could the bow of Elam be a symbol of military power? Possibly, right? And is that what we saw? Well,
yeah.
We certainly saw some of that. I mean, there were some estimates that 92% of the what was it called, Revolutionary Guard Command was destroyed.
Yeah.
So, potentially somebody could look at that and say, okay, I mean, that certainly seems like the bow of Elam. If Elam is Iraq, or Iran, rather, that bow is broken, right? So then the prophecy says there will be disaster and dispersion, where the people of Elam will be scattered to the four winds. So perhaps a reference to mass displacement or broader regional instability, perhaps a refugee crisis. And then God says he will bring destruction and judgment on Elam. But then there's the promise that in the latter days I'll restore the fortunes of Elam. So kind of like a political revival, perhaps, maybe. So what do you think?
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah. Why is he bothering to break the bow of this Elam if he's just going to restore it eventually? I don't know the answer to that, but it's important to note that this connection of Elam with modern day Iran is not a new connection. I just did a quick search here for different commentators and theologians who've made these connections. And there's a long list, but more modern scholars, Dr. Michael Heiser makes this connection, says that Elam is the territory of modern Iran.
Interesting.
Dr. Eugene Merrill of Dallas Theological Seminary, he affirms Elam as a region of ancient Iran, noting its connection to the Persian dominance in the book of Daniel. The Zondervan Illustrated Bible Dictionary, Elam was an ancient kingdom located in the region of present-day Iran, east of Babylon.
Interesting.
So, yeah, it is interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, so where would this be in the end times timeline would probably be the biggest question. If this is like referring to an end times event, there's a lot of people believe that this is right before the tribulation. So right before, that 7 years of tribulation, it's fulfilled before, if you study kind of that arc of what some people believe the Antichrist will do. He'll make some sort of a peace agreement with Israel and then break it, right? So one could see how, if this is related to it, it's kind of setting the stage for the formation of a temporary false peace, right? That if this is a precursor to, some sort of a peace agreement that Antichrist makes and then breaks, perhaps this kind of destabilizes the Middle East once again and then rebuilds it and brings in kind of this false era of seeming prosperity, right? So others would say this is linked with other prophecy, like Ezekiel 38:39. So the Gog-Magog war. I think it was Pastor Jack Hibbs at a Calvary Chapel was saying that the strikes against Hezbollah in Syria were some sort of a fulfillment of Ezekiel 38 and 39. Did I share that with you?
No.
Yeah. Interesting. I'm not sure I can really see that. I don't really see that as much, but some have said that this is kind of a connection, an early phase of the Ezekiel 38 coalition breaking apart, that Gog and Magog, come out of that. So, but most people say this probably would not be during the tribulation itself, that the global judgments that you read about in the book of Revelation with all the seals, trumpets, and bowls, that's, in the middle of the great or the middle or the end of the tribulation. People would see this instead as a regional judgment that shifts the balance of power and possibly allows for the rebuilding of the Jewish temple, or, like we said, kind of that false peace agreement. So, I don't know. I mean, this is a, who knows, right? Is this it? Is this a fulfillment of Jeremiah 49? Is it not?
That's interesting. Yeah. It uses a very specific phrase in the Hebrew. I'm looking over it. It's verse 39. It says, Be'acharit hayamim, which is in the days that are later, is how you could literally translate that. And it says, so this is all going to happen in the later days, the last days. But that phrase is a very like loaded phrase, and the Acharit Hayamim, the last days. What's interesting is one of the few usages of that phrase is actually going back to Numbers 24, where we get the inspiration for the naming of this operation, the Rising Lion.
Interesting.
So it creates this loop almost of like, in the last days, I will break the bow of Elam. Numbers 24, it's in the last days, let me tell you about this people Israel. They're going to rise up like a lion, and like, it's pretty interesting.
Right.
It's almost like this feedback loop of that phrase. But this phrase is the same one used in like Isaiah 2, in the last days, my mountain will become the highest of all the mountains. And it says the word of the Lord will go forth from Jerusalem, that kind of stuff. But it's a very loaded phrase. But yeah, I don't confess to, knowing or claim to know how it all, but it is interesting, and I'm just kind of processing.
Sure. Yeah.
Processing it all.
I mean, I admit when I saw it, I was pretty skeptical when I saw it, people tweeting about it and stuff. I'm just like, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then I turned to my Bible and started reading it, and then started researching, okay, what is Elam? And okay, it says in the latter days, so this would be has not been fulfilled yet, right? Because that's always what that phrase means in the Bible, So yeah, it's interesting. It could be, could not be. I mean, we don't know, because no man knows the day nor the hour when the Son of Man will return. That's Jesus, except for the Father in heaven. But it certainly seems that as you read the Bible honestly and openly, taking your political lens off, whether you're a libertarian who thinks we should be isolationist, whether you're a hardcore leftist that thinks that the Bible's not to be taken in any way, shape, or form as something literal other than just symbolism, allegory, and story, it's kind of hard to dismiss the apocalyptic literature. And it's kind of hard as you read through apocalyptic literature to believe that God has no plan for ethnic Israel in the end times. Because it certainly seems God does. And I guess the big question is like, how does that, if this is a prophecy from God's word that God himself is going to break the bow of Elam, he's going to use his people to do it, maybe, does that mean that the U.S. has to get involved if the U.S. is going to be godly?
Well, okay. Let's just take biblical worldview out of the equation.
Okay.
If you have a nation that is governed by Islamo-fascists who will want to establish a Muslim caliphate all around the world, and they have plainly said, we will wipe Israel off the map, and then we're coming for the United States. If you have someone in their backyard who wants to remove them from power and is asking for your help, it just seems, and they're a democracy, a constitutional democracy, it just seems right to maybe at least assist them with, at a minimum, like intelligence or like satellite imagery or something like that.
Sure.
Maybe even sell them some weapons that they can use to defend themselves with.
Right.
I mean, it seems like they're fighting a fight that you will have to eventually.
Right.
So yeah, just take the Bible out of the equation, and it seems like that's maybe the right thing to do. But
so just from like a
a secular
vantage point to just say, hey, is it good for anybody? Is it good for the human race? Is it good for the global community if Iran gets a nuclear weapon?
Right, exactly.
No, probably not. Right.
Yeah.
It's mutually assured destruction on a level we've never seen.
Yeah.
If the Middle East turns nuclear, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
No.
So no, I don't think we have to get directly involved. I think it would be wise of us to at least offer some sort of assistance, whatever that looks like.
Right.
But no, I don't want to be in a war. I don't want to get wrapped up in a war.
Yeah. Are you giddy for the end times?
There's only a couple of things I'm giddy for, and I don't think you want to. No, I'm not giddy for the end times. Actually, I'm just I am, believe it or not, and people in my congregation I drive them nuts with this because I do not talk about the end times. I don't teach on the end times. I don't mention it a whole lot. I don't delve into that topic. I think it can serve as a big distraction, but also I feel very inadequate teaching on the end times. Honestly, I just feel unqualified to teach on the end times.
I've taught through Revelation twice. I love teaching through the book of Revelation. I'm not a very good newspaper eschatologist.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm not very good at when people come to me, they're like, hey, there was another blood moon tonight. You know what this means? And I'm like, I don't. Well, according to the fourth trumpet of the 8th week of the, then you take the Hebrew and close one eye and sit on your, and it's like, I just want to read the Bible. I want to teach the Bible. I know what the Bible says. And I think Jesus said, let me see if I can look it up. He says as lightning strikes from one side of the sky. Let me read it. Jesus says in Matthew 24:27, for as the lightning comes out of the east and shines even into the west, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. In other words, if it's going to be so obvious and so evident that Jesus is returning, we're just called to be ready all the time. And so as we see wars, rumors of wars, as we see, destabilization in the Middle East, as we see all that stuff, we don't need to get afraid. We also don't need to get superstitious. We need to seek the Lord, preach the gospel, make disciples, make sure that we are ready spiritually for the day Jesus comes back, because it could be any time. And so a spirit of superstition with, your newspaper out and, maybe it's, trying to date guests. That's not helpful. It's also not helpful, kind of this snide sense of smug mockery at Christians who say, hey man, I'm just trying to live ready for the return of Christ whenever it could be.
Yeah.
That's not helpful either. Somewhere in the middle between those two, I think, is the sweet spot that we want to be. That imminency of Christ's return that we read about all throughout church history. That's been like a value that we've held to as Christians since the first century. So
yeah.
Yeah.
And I would say to our friend who commented, there's like the John Hagees out there. They leave a bad taste in my mouth as well. And I don't.
Oh gosh, yeah, me too.
I don't want to be like them or teach like them or hold to some of their beliefs. And I could see how you can look at the evangelical Christian world and say these people are bonkers for anything Israel does. They just write like a blank check, so to speak, for Israel and its leadership. But I definitely don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater either.
Yeah,
I think
me either.
Israel is important, and we should bless Israel.
Mm-hmm.
We should point out Israel's moral failings and flaws if and when we see them, so that she can repent and be given an opportunity to repent. But we definitely don't want to say, whatever,
Yeah,
I'm tired of it. Yeah, just because your pendulum swung the other way as a knee-jerk reaction to people like the likes of John Hagee.
Yeah, and I would just caution anybody as we kind of land the plane. I think I said this phrase earlier. The misadventures of groupthink is a very, very real phenomena right now. So critical thinking about individual issues through the lens of our worldview is something that we're not good at right now. We don't know how to think critically about individual issues through the lens of our worldview. We just look at whatever our side is saying and whatever talking points our side is saying, and we go, oh, this is where we're at because look what the other side says. Oh, whoa. And I just would say, hey, man, that's not thinking critically about an issue individually through the lens of whatever worldview you are viewing the world through. And I just say that's more important than the whataboutism and the groupthink that we find ourselves caught in right now. So anyway.
That'll preach.
What you got going on the rest of your week? What are you doing?
Man, I have no idea. Just living the dream.
Living the dream, building houses, taking names, kicking butt. Yeah.
Yep.
I'm off tomorrow. This is like my Friday night.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Partay.
I'm helping my in-laws move. So
okay. Excellent. How's that work? Do you have to put it in like PTO or do you just call somebody?
No, I've got my off days.
Okay. How many
Yeah.
off days do you get? How many off days do
2.
you give yourself? 2?
Yeah.
You get 2 per year?
No, 2 per week. Just like normal people get Saturday, Sunday.
Okay.
My off days
I
are
didn't know,
Thursday,
like,
Friday.
When it comes to
Yeah.
like vacation and stuff, like is there?
Oh, no, vacation, I've got PTO. Yeah.
Okay.
So, but I'm not taking PTO. I've just got my normal off days because I work Saturday
Yeah.
through Wednesday,
Okay.
and then I've got Thursday, Friday as my off days.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's nice.
I thought, as my friend, you would know my schedule a little bit more than that.
No,
You don't know my schedule?
I don't know your work schedule.
That hurts.
You
That
need to
hurts
post
a
it on
lot,
the
dude.
refrigerator so I can see it.
I am going to send it to your house, and you can post it on the refrigerator. That way, at all times, you can know where I am and what I'm doing.
Include your poop schedule in that too.
No, you just have to call the office, and you can ask my team. Hey,
Oh,
what
gosh.
time does he normally just saunter into the bathroom? They'll tell you. I'm a creature of habit.
That was-
Anyway, this has been the Beards and Bible podcast, and appreciate you listening. If you have any questions for us, complaints, cries of outrage, or if you want to accuse us of being giddy about the end times, send us an email, beardsandbiblepodcast@gmail.com. We'll see you next time.